Okay, everybody, welcome back to BarryTsGarage. Today, we're going to talk about tuning a carb on an old car. And you'd think it'd be pretty simple because there's like a thumb screw and just a screwdriver and a set screw. And it's, how complicated could it be on a 1915 car? It can't be that complicated. But Alan wants to do a good job, and we're going to take you along to what's involved and show you what happens. You're going to enjoy this if you are interested in the beginnings of automotive mechanical engineering. So come on along. All right, so Alan, what is your enthusiast hobbyist project of the day?
Oh, we're going to go ahead and set the idle for correct mixture. And it'll give us about 30%, also a correct mixture for mid-range. We've got about 100 miles on the car now since we rebuilt it. To kind of summarize, this is the 1915 Vitesse V8, the Formula car, Formula 3 liter, made for the International Auto Show. I've raised compression a little bit. I've also done things to the float. I've done a lot of things when it's really getting sorted now. I've been maybe 75 mile an hour, blipped it up to that high. I'm expecting 100, 110 mile an hour when I get it all done. So what we're going to do today is we're going to set both sides of the updraft Zenith carburetor. So the idle carbon monoxide is between 2.5 and 3 parts. 2 parts to 1 is what normal atmosphere is on carbon monoxide.
Gotcha.
So an engine running perfectly would have carbon monoxide of 2.0 also. Doesn't mean you can breathe the air because there's other contaminants and there's other mixtures inside of that engine coming out too. But from a hobbyist standpoint, the only thing we can reasonably measure for a reasonable price, which is $200 or $300 for a digital meter, is carbon monoxide. It's a great marker to set carburetors.
Very good.
So what we're using a Gunson digital carburetor measuring device made in England.
All right.
And then I've let it sit here for 10 minutes. And you set it to, so it's about 2.0. That's the normal atmosphere carbon monoxide. And then we're going to start the engine up. And as we start the engine up, we're going to place it inside the exhaust system for 2 or 3 minutes and see if it stays at 2. But I think it's going to be at 6 or 7 or 8.
Right.
And then we have a dual exhaust system on this, and we have 2 banks, and we have header systems, a header in exhaust manifold on both sides. So we're going to stick it in one exhaust pipe. We're going to write down what the reading is. And we're going to put it in the other side, letting it stabilize and write down what the reading is. Then we're going to by trial and error, adjust the jet, which is adjustable click, 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 click jet on each side until we get to something between 2.5 and 3% of carbon monoxide.
Okay. Can I ask a question just to make 100% clear? So does that mean that the carburetor, the intake manifold, and the exhaust manifold all keep discrete separate sides for the system so you can measure?
Completely.
Okay, good, perfect. That's a great answer.
Yeah, so we have 2 4-cylinder Siamese engines basically in one block.
Okay.
So we can do something very specific on this car.
Right.
So you have to do that before you do anything with your high-speed jets. You have to match at least the lower end of it.
Right.
You can't do it by ear too. You're listening to 8 cylinders. You can't do it by ear. So we're going to do it electronically and get a really good starting point.
Great. Fantastic. I can't wait to see how this goes.
Okay, here's what we're going to adjust. This is one jet, and this knurl, we're going to put our fingers across this and turn it, and that's the other side.
I see. Okay.
So that's all we're doing, and I don't know how much it's going to move by each click of the clicker.
Okay.
So it's going to take maybe an hour to actually adjust them. It's going to take 5 minutes to actually measure it. So we won't have an hour-long video. We'll see what the readings are now. I'll adjust it and we'll come back on the video.
Okay, very good.
Okay, now what we're going to do is, when we first put the engine together, when we did our first video, there was no way to crank start the engine because it's just too tight. Again, we've got 100 miles on it now, so I'm going to see if I can crank start it. It's a V8, but we're going to crank start it. So that should be one quick pull and hopefully it'll start.
Okay. Oh, nice. Definitely jumping up, of course.
Really rich.
Yep.
We're seeing a little black smoke coming out too, so that's extremely rich. So we'll let it stabilize, and we'll write it down. Okay, we've let this one run for 2 or 3 minutes. It's stabilized at 7.5 to 8.
Yep.
It's very, very rich. Now we're going to take it out, and we're going to let it stabilize back to 2, and we're going to put it in the other side. But on the first side, on the right side, after letting it warm up, it's about 7.8 to 8% carbon monoxide. So now we've turned the engine off, and we've let the instrument get back down to 2 again. So now I'm going to crank start the car again, and I'm going to put it in this side and see what the number is.
All right, let's see how that works. All right.
Two 2.0.
Yep.
Okay, this one's even a little bit higher, about 8.2, right? So now I'll turn it off, then I'll go ahead and mark those, then we'll start this slow process of adjusting to get it back down to 2, 2.5, 3 or so.
Okay, good. All right, so let's catch up from where we left off. You got a baseline reading.
Yep.
And we were leaving you because we didn't want to spend any long, lengthy time watching you make one adjustment at a time.
It could have been 5 minutes.
It might have been. What happened? Tell us what happened.
Probably 7 or 8 hours.
Really?
So the first thing was the accelerator needed a stronger spring. The second thing was by idling, the float on the needle and the seat for the needle wasn't really polished, so I took the carburetor apart and polished the seat so I could get it to go back to a baseline each time.
Okay, so it was kind of erratic. It was random how it was seating?
Well, it kind of was, but there's 2 brass fulcrums that push down the float inside that Zenith 2-barrel carburetor.
Okay.
And it's a bunch of heavy metal that's moving back and forth with a heavy metal float. And you've got an engine with a V8, so it's under the hood.
Ah.
So, and the float is a long needle, it's 4 inches long, and it makes contact in a pretty big area, not like a really finite little, shut off like a modern carburetor does.
Right.
So it's I polished the seat, really, really polished. I put basically a Q-tip, it's a Dremel tool, with polishing rouge on it, and I polished that, so it was more controllable. Then I went ahead and put a stronger spring on it, and then after I did that, the butterflies on this Zenith updraft 2-barrel, these butterflies can be both offset, and they were. So each time I was trying to set it on idle on one side or idle on the other, one side is just a little bit off idle because it's not really seating to the center of the jet hole in the barrel of the carburetor.
Right.
So take that all apart and absolutely match them so they're both butterflies are coming at the open and closing at the same time. Right.
And would I assume that they probably were that way at the factory, but over years of time they got out of adjustment?
Well, and I probably misadjusted it too, because as you set the idle speed, you see an adjustment on the butterfly, on the arm. So you turned it in or turned it out, not realizing you're adjusting one butterfly.
Okay.
So then when you take it all apart, you figure out, don't touch those 2 screws, touch that one. So there's 3 screws on the butterflies. This is the accelerator, so that's the butterflies moving back and forth.
Oh yeah.
But as you see, there's screws on both sides of the butterfly, on both sides, and you can adjust both butterflies in both barrels of the carburetor so they are exactly the same.
Okay.
And now they exactly are the same.
Wow, and it wasn't the case before.
No, they weren't the same, but they're exactly the same now.
Well, that's got to help improve your adjustability and correctly.
Yes, it does. And then those are the two jets, and I marked those with yellow and red paint, fingernail polish, to let me know where my adjustments were.
Excellent. Wow. Okay, well, this is a good education here to how that was being done.
And then it's kind of hidden. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
So I probably messed it up as much as anybody in the last 109 years did.
Right.
So it wasn't an easy project to get it set up correctly.
Okay.
But yesterday when we left off, we had 8% carbon monoxide on the left side and 7.5% on the right side.
That sounds right.
And then this is how basically my jets turn on the carburetor.
Okay.
But the jets aren't really a jet in this situation. My Winfield's, a jet is really a jet. It's controlling the amount of fuel. In this, you're controlling the air. You basically have a tube from where the float bowl is, and you have another tube that kind of goes around that. And by pulling that tube away from this tube, you're sucking, the suction in the float bowl is less. So you're drawing less fuel. Unless the float level in the bowl continues to go up or down. So you're not really, it's not a finite, perfect adjustment.
Right.
So I marked those, I put fingernail polish, I put yellow and a red 180 degrees off from each other, so I knew my baseline, my starting point.
Yep.
And then I knew which way to turn it.
Yep.
So then as I was starting to turn it and get my adjustments, I tried all different settings, and I didn't really see a lot of change until I started getting down low. And then I finally got it down to about 3 or 3 1/4 average. But not knowing, I'm trying to see if I can get it down to 2.
Right.
A 2 is a perfect car that passes emission.
Yeah.
Well, this is a 109-year-old race car, so it's not a very perfect car.
Can't expect that.
So I like to have around 3 in the old cars. If I can have it around 3, that's pretty good idle. And then off idle, it should, at least I can adjust the off idle and the high speed if those things are adjustable in the carburetor. But as it turned out in this, since I only have 100 miles break-in on it, the rings aren't totally set yet. So being that the rings aren't totally set, there's a little bit of a spit of oil smoke every 10 or 15 seconds. You can kind of see it.
Okay.
As that overhead valve sucks another drop of oil.
Yep.
And there's carbon monoxide and oil smoke too.
Okay.
So that adds to it.
Yep.
Even though I want to only measure the CO in the exhaust from the gasoline.
Right.
You have other substances in there.
Yeah.
And then also this carburetor, it's a fabulous carburetor. It's an updraft 2-barrel carburetor that's somewhat adjustable, made by Zenith, but it has no accelerator pump. So when I finally got it adjusted down to these 2 points here, on my meter, I was pretty happy. That's averaging around 3% carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
Then I kind of took it out and tested it, and it was a dog.
Oh.
This basically is a violent car. When you give it gas, it pretty much, if you're shifting gears or you're in a curve, it'll start burning rubber on one tire at least. But it just dogged out.
Wow.
So then I made it richer, and once I got it to around 5, then that extra fuel that's already perculating is accelerating and going into the next stage of the carburetor.
Okay.
So I will never be able to pass California emissions with this 109-year-old race car.
Right.
But 5.0 is pretty darn good.
Very good, and a much better than 8.
Another result is our idle speed went from 1,100 RPM when we first started, and now it's reliably at 800 RPM.
Okay.
So to adjust idle speeds and idle mixture at idles that's a result, and now it's really, really smooth as it runs.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, that's a great result. You must be very happy because you've got a lower idle, little more speed. Now, is it more responsive than it was before? Or about the same?
Well, it's just as responsive coming from a lower RPM.
Oh, right.
So every engine will idle.
Sure.
A bad running engine will idle at 2,000 RPM.
Yeah.
But as you get better and better and more refined, they'll idle lower and lower and lower.
Right.
So now we have the same responsiveness
at
a low RPM. So that makes more sense.
Yeah. Very good. Well, that's excellent. So should we take it for a quick spin around
Yeah,
the
let me
block?
start it.
Yep.
This is a kind of a violent car, so you make sure
Yes.
that you're in neutral.
Absolutely.
Because you're standing in front of a V8.
That's right. Yes, folks, this is a V8. People would not look at this and realize.
A real V8.
An overhead valve V8 even. I still need to know the stats on how many of those there were in 1915. Wow.
Hear the nice lower idle speed now?
It is a lot lower.
Yep.
It is a lot
So
lower.
that's a really nice idle for this old of a race car. And if I give it a little gas,
Sounds great.
so it's just more refined now.
It is. It's very smooth. Yeah, those are the push rods out. External push rods moving along. Wow, it sounds so good. Man. Terrorize the neighborhood here. I'm glad for those speed bumps for you doing 100 miles an hour in here. I'd be dead for sure.
We've got it running so well,
Yeah.
even at low RPM, we're keeping it in third gear, and it's even pulling from low end, so it's not too lean.
Yeah, quite smoothly, I must say.
You know, it's as drivable as a passenger car, yet it's a 100-mile-an-hour race car.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's pretty good. So I did get a good result.
You did.
I didn't get exactly the result but it doesn't matter. I mean, you're looking for something,
Yeah.
and you're settling for something that is what you ended up with.
It's the reality of what's possible right now. So, but considering again that this is a freshly built engine and it's already settled in so well already,
Yeah.
it'll only get better.
Yep. It will.
So that's fantastic. Man, oh man. You do a fine job shifting this little beast, I must say. Great.